Welcome to The New Next, a podcast that addresses current events and how they will impact the future. Co-hosted by the inquisitive public speaking champion, Mike McVeigh, and energy, economics, and technology expert, Matt Jensen. Join us as we explore all things energy, economic, tech, and political, and how they will affect our future.
Podcasts typically grow by word of mouth. If you know anyone who would enjoy this content, sharing this in a message or by posting on social media would mean the world to us. Thanks for listening, and let's get started.
Yes, and I thought we could talk about that for a little bit. I'm sure this will be in our show notes, but if you go to Statista.com /chart/27646/most-important-issues-facing-the-US, and you'll see a cool little there'll be a couple paragraphs followed by inflation is America's top concern graph, and I thought maybe you could talk a little bit about that, Matt.
Yeah, so I think this has a lot to perhaps play on political issues. So like who is in power after November, and perhaps Roe versus Wade kind of changes this calculus a little bit. But was it James Carville that coined that phrase? It's the economy, stupid. Yeah. So I feel that has been that kind of the communication aspects of the current administration, I think, has been very tone deaf to what American consumers and voters really care about. So like in this, you have inflation, cost of living, 44.4%. A lot of that is energy related, and energy, food, kind of basic stuff that relates to that, the supply chain crisis, and kind of I feel that the response to questions on that many times was like, well, too bad. This is what we have to go through to change the economy. And I think that's been kind of a lot of the criticism that I've talked about on this, is that I don't think most people realize how big of a step change this is. And going so fast, like people intend to, is going to create a lot of pain. So basically acknowledging that pain and saying, too bad, this is what we're doing, is kind of like, why teenagers hate their parents in certain aspects. Not that they hate them, but being told what to do, right? It's just, I don't really, I was saying to someone earlier today, one of my friends, we were texting back and forth, like I feel oftentimes we're in a very poorly written high school finals movie for video class. When you kind of, you're like, oftentimes you're just like, did they say that? Like it just seems there's kind of a callousness or just a lack of care by a lot of the political faction to ultimately, the people that you think decide whether or not they're in office. So I don't really think that this bodes very well for Democrats in November. Like there's been a lot of Democrats that have been calling out their own party, and especially kind of the White House, for their messaging on this. And it just seems like there's literally no strategy, or like it's you can't poll test taglines and frame stuff from kind of like a linguistic perspective and think that that's an actual solution to stuff like this. Like, I think
right.
Like the notorious one was the Putin's price hike. And when I first heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cringe, because this is easily picked apart. And it's clear that it's been bull tested on focus groups. So I don't really know, but so to go back to the survey, number one, inflation, cost of living, 44.3% said that that's an issue that needed to be addressed. Health and Social Security, number two, basically long-term fiscal solvency of the U.S., economic situation, 39.7%, crime, 36%, unemployment, 33%, poverty, 32%, education, 31%, climate change, 30%, immigration, 28.5%, and housing, 27.8%. So it seems like the current administration has kind of put their fork in the ground on, the late out of the last 10 of actual issues that people care about. And it just, a lot of the discussions around it, I felt, are just tone deaf, borderline absurd sometimes. And most time they're, blatantly use the term gaslighting people, like trying to tell people that they don't see what they actually see. But I don't really get it. It seems like a kind of an implosion almost. But it's, so I think that.
Well, and
go ahead.
I think you're right, definitely, about the direction, that it's directionless right now, because even though this goes a little bit into political, it's political in the sense of, I guess apparently most of the Democrats thought that Biden was going to be a one-termer and he was going to step down. Like, that seemed to be a very strong emphasis from some of the things he said during his campaign.
Well, he's 79, so who wants an 80-year-old president, right?
Yeah, he'd be 82 to start his second term, is what they're saying. And he's getting upset, apparently, that they're talking about, like, who's going to be the next Democrat nominee. And he's getting really upset because he's like, well, look at all this stuff I've done. And they're like, yeah, look at all this stuff you've done. And this article kind of goes back and forth. And I think it's a really good reflection of, if there was direction, I'm not saying it's more or less than the previous president, because I definitely felt like it was the flavor of the month there as well. So I don't want to put one side against the other and like, hey, this one's doing it and the other one's not. But there does seem to be a lot less focus or shared focus. There, just even some of the incidents that happened last week, if there was anything that could be said under the Trump administration, there was a certain focus. And last week in multiple areas, that was what they were talking about. I mean, I remember reading stuff 5 years ago that talked like the goal was to have the Supreme Court picked a certain way. So there was a focus to what ultimately their overall plan was. And everybody was on the same page. And right now, the Democrats are not on the same page, and they're all talking different things. So all these things that are mentioned in this survey here definitely are getting overlooked because they're squabbling between themselves. It would also be interesting because it says that this survey it was a year-long survey between April 21 and March 22. So gas prices were only starting to go up, really. It'd be interesting if there was something just for the past 3 months.
Yeah, totally.
To go to see what they would say. It
seems like it seems like we have a group that's purely political creatures.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people voted for Biden because they thought it would bring some stability to it. Like I assume a lot of people thought that he would just kind of be like, almost a Manchurian candidate in a place that other people would be pulling it behind the scenes. But it's really alarming to see what. So Trump had a lot of criticism for talking smack to and breaking the norms of global cooperation. But you've seen what Biden, what he's said in the past, Saudi Arabia, like what he's called them, and now realizing that he needs them. It's very alarming. Some of the stuff that I think, frankly, it's better not to have him speak at all, because he keeps saying stuff that are against their stated policy. And it just seems like he has no clue what his actual policy of his administration is. But
I honestly don't listen to him talk, and I didn't listen to Trump talk. I didn't listen to Obama talk, and I didn't listen to Bush, Clinton, or anybody else. So I don't have any way of even speaking towards that one way or the other. But I definitely think, and I actually said this back in 2016 before the previous election, that no matter who won the 2016 election, I was a firm believer that it was going to be a one-term president. And I was pretty sure that the next person, no matter who it was going to be a one-term president as well. I didn't know it was going to be Biden.
Yeah.
And I honestly thought it was probably going to be Clinton that was going to get it in 2016. But that to be said, that we're in a weird world right now where the stability, like in one sense, you want the same person to be there so they can get the downfall for all their crap, all the stuff that they're doing wrong. But you also want hope. But no matter who goes in after Biden or in the state of Oklahoma, whether it's now or 4 years from now, whoever goes in after Stitt, it's going to be a really rough patch to try to fix. And unfortunately, that's getting straight into politics. I think the administration could definitely be doing a better job with handling some of the issues that were known coming into that election. I don't necessarily know that what happened with Putin and Ukraine this year was going to happen back in January of last year. But there are a lot of these things on the survey that they haven't been fixed. They haven't been really addressed, as you said earlier.
Yeah, and I think so. There was an exit rant for Ukraine last year, and our administration basically said, no, we need to confront Russia head on. So all of this was unavoidable last year. And it's kind of, it's really, it's just wild. So sometimes I just kind of sit here and I'm like, do they not know this is going to happen? It just seems like on most things, it's the exact wrong decision. And you have we've talked a little bit about this divergence from East and West. And granted, the West over Ukraine has kind of solidified their cohesion for now. But with what Russia is doing and cutting, starting to cut capacity of Nord Stream and basically throwing that country into a energy crisis, it looks like they're successfully trying to break the West. How far does this kind of this group cohesion go when their economies start to collapse based on decisions that we've made? And then on the other side, the BRIC nations, so Brazil, Russia, India, China, and then you could probably almost throw Indonesia in there too. There's been this, of the countries where they're kind of, developing nations, there seems to be a clear understanding of kind of core functional abilities that their country's leaders should do. Like Modi from India has been very clear about not abandoning, like canceling Russia and stuff like that, saying that they need their energy, they've got to take care of their citizens. And it's just sometimes I feel like we're so rich now, and we've had life so easy that we kind of feel like we can make these statements, kind of canceling statements almost, without really understanding the full effect of our actions. But the BRIC countries seem to be very aligned. You'd say it's on Russia's friendly country list, but it's like with that before, I don't know if there's really a understanding of what a lot of the people in the U.S. who are barely getting by right now are feeling, and I assume a lot of people like that are going to vote. Kind of the wild card here is what Roe versus Wade's been such a hot button political issue that is core focus to a lot of people. What sort of that driving factor that has for election turnout? But it's a weird thing. Like I was talking to one of my friends the other day, and he's very staunch, like I'd say liberal and stuff, but we were talking about how the only people to blame for Roe versus Wade being overturned are the Democrats. Like they had a super majority back in 2009. There's been, since I feel almost like it's a way to divide people and fundraise off of. Sometimes you don't want to take action on these things that you can benefit from.
Right.
But there's been a lot of opportunities to replace it with meaningful law that was actually passed by Congress and couldn't be overturned by a change to the Supreme Court. And there's been really, I'd say, no political will to do it. So I think
I don't know how much we can talk about the Supreme Court without getting political.
I don't really want to talk about it much, but kind of my point here is that I think the reason Trump was even elected in the first place was because people wanted there to be an acknowledgement of what normal citizens wanted in terms of policy actually being kind of addressed and focused on. And this is being addressed a lot more efficiently in countries besides the U.S. But the U.S. almost just, it seems like a bad movie at times.
It seems like a court trial between two exes about something. If you would like to learn more about the New Next podcast, find us at thenewNextPodcast.com, where you can suggest a topic you would like for us to cover. If you enjoyed what you heard, share the podcast, tell a friend about it, or rate us with 5 stars. We appreciate you.